By the time Eric found the rock, the sun was already low. He'd hiked nearly 14 miles that day, pushing farther into the Sierra backcountry than he'd planned. It was a record for him, maybe a bit too much. His legs ached, his water was almost gone, and a dull throb pulsed behind his eyes from the thin mountain air and possible dehydration from all the hiking he had done. The rock, a tall granite slab nestled in a shallow clearing, looked like a blessing. The size of a car, it shielded him from the wind. Behind it, tall pines swayed gently, their tops brushing the sky. About 20 yards from it, there was a small stream flowing. Salvation. He refilled his water bottle and drank well. He walked back to the tall granite, dropped his pack, rolled out his sleeping pad, and collapsed. He wouldn't bother with the tent. The weather was dry. He ate some food he brought with him and curled into his sleeping bag. He just wanted sleep. The forest was quiet, peaceful. Time was about 8 p.m. He woke with a start, pitch black, maybe 2 a.m. The wind had picked up, sighing through the trees like waves. He blinked, unsure what had roused him. Then he heard it, a groan, not animal, not wind, something deeper, a low grinding creak, like old wood being twisted. He sat up slowly, breath fogging in the cold night air. It was a full moon night, so he could see even in the dark. He looked around again with his torchlight. There was nothing. Few minutes passed. Then, the sound came again, longer this time, a groaning moan that made his skin crawl. He turned toward the trees behind the rock and squinted. Nothing, just darkness and shadow. But something felt off. The forest was holding its breath. No crickets, no owls, not even rustling, just that groan, rising again like something ancient was waking up. Then a loud pop, sharp and violent, cracked through the air, and everything snapped into chaos. The forest exploded with noise. Eric scrambled to his feet as something massive tore through the canopy. A tree. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. The pressure in the air, the vibration underfoot, the way all the sound collapsed into one moment of terror. The ground shook as the tree slammed down, inches from where he'd been sleeping. Eric screamed, stumbling back. Dust and bark fragments choked the air. He tripped and hit the granite slab hard, his elbow scraping against the rough stone. When the dust settled, he saw it. A pine, easily 80 feet tall, had fallen directly beside the rock. The top of it lay buried in the underbrush. Its trunk, thick and split near the base, lay shattered just beside where his head had been. If he hadn't woken up, he would have been crushed, silenced, buried. They call trees like that widow makers, dead on the inside, rotting slowly, their bark hiding decay, until a strong wind tips the balance. Eric had heard of them. Everyone who hikes deep woods has, but no one ever thinks they'll be the one lying beside it when it falls. He stood trembling, his knees weak. The smell of sap and wet rot filled the air. The trunk had split apart like a rotten tooth, filled with black mold and insects crawling from the center. He stepped away, flashlight shaking in his grip, scanning the other trees. How many more stood like that? Hollow, waiting. He didn't sleep again that night, just sat against the rock, staring at the broken tree, jumpy at every gust of wind. He hiked out at first light. Every creak in the woods, every sway of a branch sent a jolt through his chest. By the time he reached his car, he was drenched in sweat despite the cold. Eric never hiked alone after that. He never slept under open trees again. The five of them, Alex, Maya, Jordan, Tess, and Chris, had been planning this camping trip for months. A weekend in the woods, no cell service, just nature, laughter, and the rush of water. The waterfall they'd hiked to wasn't on any public map. Alex had found it through a friend of a friend who was into off-trail hiking. By mid-afternoon Saturday, they had the tents pitched, a fire going, and gear scattered across the clearing. The waterfall raged in the background, crashing into a wide stone basin before funneling into a stream that snaked downhill into the forest. It was perfect, secluded, wild, and surrounded by towering trees. But the wind had been odd since morning. It had picked up slowly, whistling through the pine canopy in low, haunting tones. By mid-afternoon, it became sharp and unpredictable, rattling branches overhead like bones in a bag. "Maybe we should move away from the trees a bit," Tess said, eyeing the taller ones swaying overhead. Chris scoffed. "Come on, what's the worst that could happen? A squirrel falls on us?" Still, unease crept in, as if the forest itself was warning them. They sat beside the fire anyway, eating lukewarm noodles from their camp stove, yelling to hear one another over the wind and water. Jordan leaned back on his elbows and looked up. "Anyone else feel like the trees are leaning too much?" Maya nodded. "Yeah, it's weird. That one especially." She pointed to a tall, ancient pine behind their tents. Its trunk was wider than a barrel, bark blackened in patches from age or disease. It leaned ever so slightly, the wind catching its top like a sail. Then came the groan, low, guttural, like a wail echoing through the forest. Everyone froze. The wind surged again, and the groan turned into a deep, splintering crack. Jordan stood up. "Guys, that tree?" Crack. The air shattered. Birds exploded from the canopy. A thunderous roar followed as the enormous pine tore from its roots, snapped halfway down, and began to fall. Right toward the campsite. They screamed. Tents flew. Bags tumbled. The tree fell fast, a roaring wall of bark and branches. Chris tackled Maya. Alex dove behind the fire pit. The others ducked and ran. And then, a second explosion. But they weren't dead. No one had been crushed. They opened their eyes. The tree hadn't hit the ground. It hovered just above them, its colossal trunk resting on a giant slab of boulder just behind the tents. The tip of the pine had slammed into the rock, stopping the fall, barely, like a lever suspended at an angle. The canopy brushed the ground. Branches splayed over their gear like dead fingers. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Maya broke the silence, her voice shaking. That would have killed us." Alex nodded, staring wide-eyed at the tree. "If that rock wasn't there..." They looked around. The tents were flattened. One had a branch straight through the fabric. The fire pit was buried. The stump of the broken tree still steamed at the break, sap oozing down like blood. The irony is that the tree looked healthy from the outside. It did not look sick or dead. Jordan stepped toward the trunk and touched it, hand trembling. The wood was rotten inside, hollowed and black with decay. "A widowmaker," he whispered. Chris looked at him. "What?" "That's what they call trees like this. Dead on the inside. Standing tall until a wind like today knocks them down. You never hear it coming until it's too late." The group packed up in silence, shaking, hands moving on instinct. By the time they started hiking out, the wind had died. The forest was quiet again, but the five of them would never forget the sound. That crack, that groan. That tree had been waiting. A dead sentinel standing for years, just waiting for the right gust, the right moment. It had fallen exactly where they sat, And if not for that single slab of rock, the trip would have ended in blood and broken bones. They never camped under trees again. And none of them ever doubted that the forest can kill you. Not with claws or fangs, but with silence and timing. With a tree that waits,